Jacob Holloway bought the map for $3 from a dying prospector in a Tucson saloon. The old man's hand shook as he pressed the cracked leather into Jacob's palm, whispering about gold hidden in the Superstition Mountains, enough to make a man rich for 3 lifetimes. Jacob figured it was worthless, just another desert fever dream. But when he unfolded it by lamplight and saw the precise markings, the detailed landmarks, the X that marked a cave entrance he'd actually seen once while hunting, something cold crawled down his spine. Because at the bottom of the map, in faded ink, was a single line of text: "For Jacob Holloway, who will find this in 1891. It was 1891, and Jacob Holloway was his name. The prospector died that night, and Jacob rode into the Superstitions the next morning, map clutched in his hand, wondering if he was chasing treasure or riding straight into his own grave. The desert heat shimmered like broken glass as Jacob urged his horse up the rocky trail. 3 days into the Superstitions, and he'd followed every landmark on the map with unsettling accuracy. The split boulder that looked like a giant's axe had cleaved it, the dried riverbed that curved like a snake, the stand of saguaro cacti arranged in a pattern that couldn't be natural. Everything the map promised, he found. But it was the small details that made his hand shake when he held the reins, details the map shouldn't have known. Like the cairn of stones he'd built himself 2 years ago to mark a good hunting spot. It was drawn on the map, exactly where he'd placed it. Like the lightning-struck pine that had fallen last winter, shown on the map as a fallen tree, though the map looked 50 years old. Jacob wasn't a superstitious man. He'd fought in the war, seen friends die, and learned that the world was brutal and simple. But this map was neither brutal nor simple. It was impossible. If you're already hooked, hit that like button and drop a comment. Tell me if you believe in fate or coincidence. And let me know where you're watching from. Trust me, this gets darker. On the 4th day, Jacob found the cave. It sat in a cliff face hidden behind a collapsed rock slide, exactly where the X marked on the map. The entrance was narrow, barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through, and it exhaled cool air that smelled of mineral darkness and something else, something old. Jacob lit his torch, checked his revolver, and stepped inside. The tunnel descended at a steep angle, rough-hewn walls pressing close. His torch threw dancing shadows that looked almost alive. After 50 yards, the tunnel opened into a cavern large enough to stable 6 horses, and Jacob stopped breathing. The walls were covered in carvings. Not primitive scratches or crude symbols. These were names, hundreds of names, carved in careful script covering every inch of stone from floor to ceiling. Some looked fresh, the rocks still pale where the chisel had bitten. Others were so weathered they'd nearly faded into the stone itself. Jacob moved closer, torch raised, reading the names at random. Samuel Greaves, 1867. Thomas Cord, 1852. William Ashe, 1879. Robert Finch, 1834. Every name had a date. Every date was carved with precision, and as Jacob's eyes swept across the cavern wall, his torch illuminating name after name after name, a pattern emerged that made his stomach drop. All the dates were in the past, every single one, except... His torch hand trembled as he moved to the eastern wall, following an instinct he couldn't name, and there, carved at eye level in stone that looked freshly chiseled, were the words, Jacob Holloway, 1891. The torch nearly slipped from his grip. He reached out with his free hand, touching the letters, feeling the sharp edges where a blade had carved through stone. The carving was new, days old maybe. Certainly not 50 years like the map suggested. But who had carved it? Who knew he'd come here? He spun, hand on his revolver, convinced someone was watching. But the cavern was empty. Just him, the names, and the suffocating darkness beyond his torchlight. Then he saw the second inscription directly below his name. The gold is deeper. Follow the left passage. But know this, Every man who takes from this place pays the same price. Jacob's breath came quick and shallow. The left passage. He turned and saw it. A narrow opening in the western wall, almost hidden in shadow. His torch revealed steps carved into the stone, descending into blackness. Every instinct screamed at him to leave, run, get back on his horse, and ride until the superstitions were a memory. But $3 was all he had left in the world. His ranch had failed, his wife had left him, his brother died owing him money that would never come. The war had taken his youth, and the frontier had taken everything else. If there was gold down there, real gold, it was worth the risk. Jacob descended into the left passage. The stairs went down for what felt like miles, though Jacob knew it was probably only 100 yards. The air grew colder with each step, and the walls pressed close until he had to turn sideways to keep moving. His torch burned low, and panic fluttered in his chest. If the flame died down here, he'd never find his way back. Then the passage opened into a second chamber, and Jacob forgot to breathe. Gold! Stacked against the far wall were wooden crates, dozens of them, lids pried open, contents spilling out on the cave floor, gold bars stamped with Spanish crests, bags of coins that glittered in the torchlight, jewelry, rings, necklaces, crowns, piled carelessly like children's toys. More wealth than Jacob had imagined in his wildest prospector fantasies. Enough to buy a kingdom, enough to start over, enough to never worry about money again. Jacob stumbled forward, falling to his knees, hands plunging into the coins. They were real, cold and heavy and real. He laughed, a sound that echoed strangely in the chamber, too loud, too long. He filled his saddlebags, then his pockets, then his shirt. He'd come back for more, bring a wagon, hire men, extract every ounce. This was his now. His luck had finally turned. As he stood, arms laden with gold, his torch illuminated something he hadn't noticed before. In the center of the chamber, surrounded by the treasure, was a stone altar. And on that altar lay a leather journal bound with twine, pages yellowed with age. Jacob shouldn't have touched it, should have taken his gold and left. But curiosity, that old human curse, made him set down his bags and open the journal. Drop a comment right now. Would you have taken the gold or run? Hit subscribe if you need to know what happens next, because this is where it gets really twisted.
The journal was written in dozens of different hands, the entries spanning decades. Jacob flipped to the first page and read, "My name is Samuel Greaves. I found this cave in 1867, following a map I purchased from a prospector in Tucson. The map had my name on it. I thought it was a trick, but the gold is real. I've taken what I can carry. I am wealthy now. I am blessed. But as I write this, my hands are shaken, because I looked at the wall again, and my name is still there. And below it, carved in fresh stone, are new words. Samuel Greaves will die on the ride home, thrown from his horse at Cottonwood Creek. That is 2 days from here. I do not believe it. I will not believe it." Jacob's blood went cold. He flipped forward, pages crackling. "My name is Thomas Cord. I found the cave in 1852. The map had my name. The gold is real. I have read Samuel Greaves' entry. He died as the wall predicted, thrown from his horse at Cottonwood Creek. I do not care. I have the gold. I will be careful. I will not die. But I looked at the wall before I left, and below my name are these words. Thomas Cord will die of snake bite 3 miles south of the cave. He will not reach Tucson. I do not believe this place has power over me. I am leaving now." The next entry was dated 2 weeks later, written in shaky, desperate script. "My name is William Ash. I found Thomas Cord's body 3 miles south of here, swollen with venom, dead for days. The gold was still in his saddlebags. I have taken it, along with my own haul from the cave. I'm twice as rich now. But I made the mistake of looking at the wall before I left. Below my name, fresh words. William Ash will be killed by Apaches at Red Rock Canyon. He will die slowly." "I don't believe it. I'm a good shot. I know the Apache trails. I will avoid Red Rock entirely." Jacob flipped faster, the pages blurring, entry after entry, name after name. Every man who found the cave, every man who took the gold, every man who read his own death carved into the wall, and every man who died exactly as the wall predicted. The journal entry stopped in 1889. The last one was brief. "My name is Robert Finch. I will not die like the others. I am smarter. I will take only a single coin, just enough to prove I was here. Surely the cave cannot curse a man for one coin." But the wall says, "Robert Finch will die of thirst, lost in the desert, 1 mile from water." I have 3 canteens. I have a map. I will not get lost. There were no more entries. Jacob's hands were trembling so badly he could barely hold the journal. He turned and ran back to the first chamber, torch held high, searching the eastern wall where his name was carved. And there, below Jacob Halloway, 1891, in stone that looked impossibly fresh, were new words carved in perfect script. "Jacob Halloway will be shot by a stranger in a saloon in Phoenix. He will die before he can spend a single coin." Jacob staggered backward. This was insane, impossible. Stone didn't carve itself. The future didn't write itself into cave walls. But he'd read the journal. Every man thought it was a trick. Every man took the gold anyway. Every man died exactly as the wall predicted. He looked at the saddlebags he'd filled, the gold weighing down his pockets, the coins pressed against his chest, and he made a decision. Jacob Halloway stumbled out of the cave 3 hours later, sweating, hands empty. He'd left it all. Every coin, every bar, every piece of jewelry. He placed it back in the crates as carefully as he could, hands shaking, whispering apologies to the darkness. Because he'd seen too much death in the war. He'd buried too many friends, and he'd be damned if some cursed cave would write the ending to his story. The map he burned, right there on the desert floor, watching the leather curl and blacken, the ink of his name disappearing into ash. Then he rode, hard, fast, didn't look back. Jacob reached Phoenix 7 days later. He was broke, hungry, and hollow-eyed, but he was alive. He walked into the Silver Dollar Saloon, ordered whiskey he couldn't afford, and tried to forget the cave, the names, the gold he'd left behind. A stranger sat down beside him. Tall man, scar on his cheek, wearing a duster that'd seen hard miles. The stranger ordered whiskey, then turned to Jacob and spoke in a voice like gravel. "You Jacob Halloway?" Jacob's blood turned to ice. "Who's asking?" The stranger smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Name's Carson. I'm looking for a cave in the Superstitions. Heard you might know where it is." "I don't know what you're talking about." The stranger's smile faded. His hand moved to the revolver at his hip. "I think you do, and I think you're going to tell me, or we're going to have a problem." Jacob's hand moved to his own gun, muscle memory from the war taking over. "I said, I don't know." The saloon went quiet. Men shifted away from the bar. The bartender ducked behind the counter. Carson stood slowly. "Last chance, Halloway." Jacob's mind raced. The wall had predicted this, predicted that he would die here, shot by a stranger in a saloon, before he could spend a single coin. But he didn't have any coins. He'd left it all in the cave. So maybe, just maybe, the prediction was wrong. Maybe walking away from the gold had changed his fate. Or maybe the cave's curse was inescapable. Carson's hand went for his gun. Jacob drew faster.
If your heart is pounding right now, smash that like button and subscribe. You need to see how this ends. Comment below. Do you believe you can change fate? What country are you watching from? The gunshot echoed through the saloon like thunder. Carson collapsed, a red bloom spreading across his chest. His revolver clattered to the floor, unfired. Jacob stood, trembling, his smoking Colt still raised. The saloon stared in stunned silence. The sheriff arrived 10 minutes later. Witnesses testified it was self-defense. Carson had drawn first, everyone saw it. Jacob was cleared. No charges. He'd killed a man, but he was within his rights. He walked out of the sheriff's office into the Phoenix sun, and for the first time in days, he allowed himself to breathe. The cave had been wrong. The wall had predicted his death, but he'd survived. He'd changed his fate by leaving the gold. He'd broken the curse. Jacob booked a room at a boarding house, ate his first real meal in a week, and fell asleep believing he'd cheated death itself. He woke to shouting. The boarding house was on fire. Flames roared through the ground floor, smoke pouring up the stairwell. Jacob grabbed his boots and ran for the window, coffin, eyes streaming. He made it to the street, gasping, as the building collapsed behind him in a shower of sparks. The marshal was there organizing a bucket line. "Anyone still inside?" "Don't think so," someone said. "Holloway made it out. He's the last one." Jacob leaned against a hitching post, heart hammering. That had been close. Too close. Then he felt it. A weight in his coat pocket that hadn't been there before. Frowning, he reached inside and pulled out a single gold coin. His blood went cold. He didn't remember taking it, didn't remember putting it in his pocket, but there it was, Spanish crest, heavy and real, glinting in the firelight. A single coin. The one thing he'd told himself he wouldn't take. The one thing Robert Finch had tried, thinking a single coin wouldn't trigger the curse. The journal had said, Robert Finch will die of thirst lost in the desert 1 mile from water. And his wall had said, Jacob Holloway will be shot by a stranger in a saloon in Phoenix, Arizona. He will die before he can spend a single coin. The gunfight in the saloon, Carson drawing first, Jacob killing him in self-defense. He hadn't died in the saloon. The wall had been wrong. Or had it? Jacob looked down at the coin in his hand, the coin he didn't remember taking, the coin that had somehow found its way into his pocket, and he realized with dawning horror that the curse wasn't about where you died, it was about the gold following you. Wherever you went, however you tried to escape, the gold would find you, and once it did, your fate was sealed. Jacob threw the coin into the street, watching it bounce and roll into the gutter. He backed away, breathing hard, and turned to leave Phoenix that very night. But as he mounted his horse, something made him look back at the boarding house, still smoldering in the darkness. Standing in the smoke, barely visible, was a figure, tall, wearing a duster, a scar on his cheek. Carson. Except Carson was dead. Jacob had killed him, seen the body, watched the undertaker take him away. But the figure was there, watching him with empty eyes. And as Jacob stared in frozen terror, the figure raised one hand, not in threat, but in a gesture that looked almost like a warning. Then the smoke shifted, and the figure was gone. Jacob rode out of Phoenix that night and didn't stop until dawn. He sold his horse in Flagstaff and bought a train ticket east. He rode to St. Louis, then to Chicago, then to New York. He changed his name, took work as a clerk, kept his head down, never spoke of the superstitions, the cave, or the gold. But every few months, he'd find it. A coin in his coat pocket, a gold ring in his saddlebag, a bar tucked under his mattress. The gold followed him, no matter how far he ran, no matter how many times he threw it away, burned it, buried it. It always came back. Jacob Holloway died in 1897, 6 years after finding the cave. The official cause of death was listed as natural causes, heart failure in his sleep. He was found in his New York tenement, clutching a single Spanish gold coin, his face frozen in an expression of absolute terror. The coin disappeared from the coroner's office that night. No one knew where it went. But in the Superstition Mountains, deep in a cave that only appears to those who are meant to find it, a new name appeared on the eastern wall, carved in fresh stone. Marcus Wiley, 1899. And below it, in perfect script, for Marcus Wiley, who will find this map in a Tucson saloon. The cave is still there. The gold is still waiting. And somewhere, folded in cracked leather, another map is changing hands, complete with a name, a date, and a promise of wealth beyond imagining. Maybe it has your name on it. Maybe you'll be smarter than the others. Maybe you'll leave the gold untouched. Or maybe you'll convince yourself that the curse isn't real, that the wall is just stone, that you can cheat fate itself. Every man who entered that cave thought the same thing. Every single one. So what do you think? Would you have taken the gold? Could you resist? Drop a like if this story messed with your head. Subscribe for more tales that'll keep you up at night. And comment below. If you found that map with your name on it, what would you do? Also, tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels. Thanks for sticking with me through this twisted tale. You're incredible. See you in the next one, if fate allows it.